On a blazing summer afternoon in Phoenix, sunlight shimmered across the concrete like liquid fire. Officers moved in and out of the station with easy smiles. Another ordinary day. Calm, predictable, almost peaceful. No one sensed the storm coming. That peace shattered when the doors burst open and Officer Jake stumbled inside, breathless, his face pale. In his arms was Max, the department's legendary German shepherd, limp, trembling, barely breathing. Conversations died instantly. Coffee cups dropped. Max wasn't just any K9. He was their shield, their hero, their family. Within minutes, he was rushed into the bright, sterile light of Brightview Animal Hospital, the summer sun streaming through the windows as if refusing to let the room dim. The vet's expression tightened. It may be time. We might not be able to save him. Officers gathered around as Max struggled for air, and the syringe for his final injection was prepared. But just as the needle neared his leg, Max lifted his paw, weak, shaking, wrapping it around Jake in a final desperate hug. Gasps filled the room. Even the toughest officers choked back tears, and that was the moment Dr. Collins froze, eyes narrowing, realizing something was terribly wrong, and not in the way everyone feared. What he discovered next under that scorching summer sun shocked the entire department. Before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe, and let us know where you're watching from. Our stories travel farther than we ever imagined. The summer sun in Phoenix, Arizona had a way of announcing itself long before noon. Fierce, shimmering, and mercilessly bright. Heat rippled above the asphalt, and the tall glass buildings along the boulevard flashed like polished mirrors under the cloudless sky. It was the kind of morning where the air felt dry enough to crack, and even the city's palm trees seemed to squint under the blinding light. Yet inside the Phoenix Police Department, the mood was light and easy. Officers in navy blue wandered through the bright lobby, exchanging jokes, half-finished coffee cups warming their palms. Phones rang, papers rustled, and a pleasant hum of routine settled over the station, until the radio crackled with urgency. Officer Jake Miller, a 35-year-old patrolman with a rugged, sharply handsome face and a solid build shaped by years of fieldwork, listened intently. Jake's dark brown hair was cut short for practicality, and a faint stubble shadowed his jaw, giving him a constant look of scruffy determination. Beneath the joking exterior he showed during roll call, Jake carried a gentleness rarely seen, shaped by a near-fatal incident early in his career, when a rookie mistake nearly cost his partner's life. Since then, Jake had worn responsibility like a second skin, and loyalty had become his compass. Beside him trotted K9 Max, a 6-year-old German shepherd with a muscular frame and a coat of rich sable coloring that gleamed under the sun. Max's amber eyes held a sharp intelligence, and a faint scar traced the edge of his right ear, an old reminder of a night he intercepted a knife meant for Jake. Calm, obedient, unshakably brave, Max carried himself like a veteran soldier in fur, moving with an effortless grace that drew admiration wherever he worked. Though disciplined in the field, Max was known for nudging frightened children with his warm nose or leaning gently against grieving victims, as if offering his own brand of comfort. That morning, Jake and Max were deep within a wooded edge just outside Phoenix, one of the few green places where the scorching summer sun filtered through the branches rather than burning directly onto the ground. The forest smelled of pine resin and dust, and small patches of sunlight flickered across the path like scattered gold. They were tracking a burglary suspect, following prints that wove between the trees. The day was bright, clear, and deceptively peaceful. Birds chirped, cicadas buzzed. Nothing warned Jake of what was coming. Max trotted a few steps ahead, nose low, tail steady, ears expertly tuned to the faintest sound. Jake followed with practiced calm until Max suddenly slowed. The German shepherd's posture shifted, his muscles tightening, breath hitching, steps faltering. "Max?" Jake's tone sharpened as he watched the dog hesitate mid-stride. Then, without warning, Max collapsed onto the sunlit soil. His chest rose unevenly, his legs trembling violently. Panic tore through Jake's gut. "Max! Max! Hey, stay with me, buddy." He dropped to his knees, hands braced against Max's fading body. The dog's breaths were shallow, ragged, nothing like the steady rhythm Jake knew by heart. The sun above felt suddenly harsher, its light too bright, too accusing. Jake scooped Max into his arms, muscles straining, heart hammering, and sprinted back toward the patrol SUV. Gravel flew under his boots. His breath burned as sirens wailed through the summer heat, pushing the vehicle toward Brightview Animal Hospital, a sleek white building whose polished windows reflected the blinding afternoon sun. Inside, Dr. Samuel Collins stepped forward immediately. Collins was a man in his early 50s, tall and slightly stooped from decades spent leaning over examination tables. His silver hair framed a lined face that rarely betrayed emotion unless the situation was truly dire. Warm-hearted but firm, Collins had a reputation for tireless dedication and a quiet grief born from losing his own dog years earlier, an event that shaped his career and hardened his resolve never to quit on an animal too soon. He pressed his stethoscope to Max's chest, his brows knitting. "His heart rate is unstable, breathing weak, internal collapse." "It's bad, Officer Miller." Jake swallowed hard. "Can you save him?" Collins hesitated, a silence that stabbed like a knife. "We may not be able to. The kindest choice might be to let him go peacefully." The sterile room glowed bright as sunlight streamed through the windows, washing everything in a strange, almost sacred clarity. Jake knelt beside Max, placing a trembling hand on the dog's head. "Thank you," he whispered, "for every single day." Collins prepared the syringe, the thin needle gleaming under the summer light. Nurses stepped back. Jake closed his eyes, forehead touching Max's. But the moment before the injection touched fur, Max's paw jerked upward, weak but deliberate, hooking around Jake's wrist as if begging him to wait. His eyes cracked open, clouded yet pleading. Collins froze mid-motion. "Hold on," he murmured, leaning closer. "This isn't right. Something's off." The syringe trembled in his hand as the chapter ended with the needle suspended in the air, a single heartbeat away from ending everything. The memory did not return gently. It crashed into Jake with the same force as the Arizona sun that day months earlier, when the sky above Phoenix had been a hard, brilliant blue. Back then, the asphalt shimmered like molten glass, and the smell of hot rubber clung to the air as he and Max responded to a call about an armed robber fleeing through a commercial strip. The world had been bright, loud, fast. Sirens slicing the heat, dust swirling behind their boots. And Max, younger but already carrying himself with the confidence of a seasoned warrior, sprinted ahead with ears pricked and body low, the embodiment of purposeful motion. The suspect, a tall, wiry man with twitching movements and wild, sunken eyes, had spun around suddenly, raising a pistol with shaking hands. Jake remembered the metallic glint, the split-second widening of the man's pupils, the terror and adrenaline that surged like fire. But before the shot could be fired, Max launched forward, a flash of sable fur and raw instinct, slamming into Jake's chest and knocking him out of the bullet's path. The gun discharged, echoing against the storefronts, sending birds scattering into the blinding sky. For weeks afterward, Jake couldn't shake the memory of the near miss. He often said with a crooked grin, "If not for Max, I'd be retired, permanently." The rest of the team laughed, but the truth sat heavier beneath the humor. Max had saved him. Not once, but again and again. The recollection faded, replaced by the stark fluorescent brightness of Brightview Animal Hospital's emergency room. The sunlight pouring through the tall windows mixed with the artificial glow, creating a strangely unreal brightness that made every shadow seem sharper. Max lay still on the metal table, his once steady breaths reduced to weak, uneven gasps. His normally bright amber eyes were half-lidded, unfocused. Jake stood rigid beside him, one hand clutching Max's paw, feeling the faint tremor beneath the fur, a whisper of life trying desperately to hold on. Dr. Samuel Collins, with his silver hair and calm, stoic posture, leaned closer to the monitor. His lined face, usually unreadable, now carried tension. Behind him stood Nurse Alana Reyes, a petite woman in her late 20s with warm hazel eyes and a soft voice. Her mahogany hair was tied in a tight bun, revealing the faint freckles dusting her nose. Gentle by nature, but steadfast in crisis, Alana had joined Brightview after losing her previous clinic to a wildfire, a tragedy that hardened her resolve to never ignore even the slightest chance of saving a life. She monitored Max's vitals carefully, her fingers steady though her heartbeat raced. The beeping slowed further. Jake's voice cracked. "He's fading, isn't he?" Dr. Collins didn't immediately answer. Instead, he checked Max's gums, pressed lightly against his abdomen, then inspected the trembling of his limbs. His brow furrowed deeper. "This isn't consistent," he murmured. Jake leaned closer. "With what?" "With multi-organ failure. His reflexes, they don't match the pattern, and this type of arrhythmia shouldn't be fluctuating like this." He straightened abruptly. "Stop the injection preparation," he ordered. Alana blinked. I think we're missing something." Jake swallowed hard, hope and fear warring in his chest. Collins lifted his gaze toward the bright window where sunlight cut a stark line across the room. Dust motes floated through the beam like suspended stars. The syringe on the tray glinted sharply under the light, the metallic sheen cold and final. "Get the portable scanner," the doctor said. Alana hurried out, returning moments later with a compact imaging device. She rolled it beside the table, plugging it into the wall. The machine hummed to life, its screen flickering before stabilizing into grayscale readiness. Jake helped hold Max gently as Collins positioned the probe along the dog's rib cage. The room fell silent except for the whir of the scanner and the faint rasp of Max's breathing. Slowly, faint shapes materialized on the screen. Shadows, curves, shifting blotches of light and dark. Collins adjusted the angle, zoomed, rotated. His expression tightened. "There," he whispered. Jake followed his line of sight. Near Max's diaphragm, a dark, irregular shadow pulsed faintly on the screen, an anomaly, foreign, out of place. It looked nothing like a tumor Jake had ever seen on medical charts. "Is that?" Jake's voice dropped to a strained whisper. "Cancer?" Collins didn't answer immediately. The seriousness in his eyes deepened, but not with certainty, with caution. "It doesn't look like a tumor," he finally said, his voice low. "But it shouldn't be there. And we don't know what kind of pressure it's causing internally." Alana stepped closer, squinting. "It's too dense to be swelling." Jake felt his breath stutter. "Then what is it?" Collins didn't move. He stared at the shadow, as if willing it to reveal its secrets. "If I'm wrong," he said quietly, "we'll lose him today." He exhaled slowly, the weight of the truth pressing into the bright, sterile room. "But if I'm right..." He didn't finish the thought. The chapter ended with the scanner's faint hum lingering in the air, the shadow on the screen holding the fate of a hero in its dark, unfamiliar outline. The midday sun over Phoenix was merciless, so bright it seemed to bleach the sky into a hard, white glare. Heat radiated off the streets in shimmering waves, and even inside Brightview Animal Hospital, the summer light pushed through the wide surgical room windows with an intensity that felt almost intrusive. It spilled across the stainless steel trays, the white-tiled floor, the pale green walls, turning the operating theater into a brilliant, sterile battlefield where a life-or-death struggle was about to unfold. Max lay unconscious on the operating table, his sable coat shaved along the rib cage, revealing the rise and fall of shallow, trembling breaths. The anesthesia mask covered his muzzle, and soft tubes ran across his body like fragile lifelines. His once powerful chest now looked frighteningly still. Dr. Samuel Collins, jaw tight, shoulders squared, stood over him with focus sharpened to a razor's edge. The man who usually carried himself with calm, almost philosophical patience was gone. In his place was a surgeon fighting the clock, every line on his weathered face etched deeper by determination. At the head of the table stood Nurse Alana Reyes, her hazel eyes reflecting both fear and resolve. Her small hands moved quickly, efficiently, passing instruments, checking vitals, adjusting screens. Yet anyone paying close attention could see her left hand tremble occasionally. Trauma had shaped her. Losing her previous clinic in a wildfire had taught her how fast life could be swallowed whole. Today, she fought that memory with every breath. Another nurse, Brandon Keller, joined the team, a new figure in this desperate scene. Brandon was a tall man in his early 30s with sandy blonde hair cropped short and a trimmed beard along his angular jawline. His broad shoulders and steady posture made him look imposing at first glance, but his blue eyes held a quiet gentleness. He had once served as a combat medic in the Army, and though he rarely spoke about it, the burden of battlefield memories followed him like a faint shadow. It was this past, patching up soldiers under fire, that gave him a calmness now, a stillness that helped steady the room. Outside the glass window stood Officer Jake Miller, his muscular frame taut with tension, hands braced against the cold glass. Alongside him were several officers. Captain Harris, a tall man in his late 50s with steel-gray hair and a stern, chiseled face softened only by the deep worry tight around his eyes. Officer Ryan Turner, younger, athletic, with sandy hair and a habit of clenching his jaw when anxious. And Officer Emily Grant, a sharp-eyed woman in her early 30s with auburn hair tied back and a reputation for fierce loyalty. Someone who hid emotion behind dry humor, but now stood pale, speechless. All of them watched, breath held, as Dr. Collins lifted the scalpel and made the first incision. The bright surgical lights illuminated the tissues beneath Max's skin, each layer revealing more swelling, more inflammation. The surgical team worked seamlessly, Alana suctioning, Brandon stabilizing the vitals, Collins navigating deeper. Yet every few seconds the heart monitor beeped irregularly, drawing tense glances. "There's significant internal trauma," Collins muttered, sweat forming along his temple despite the cool room. "This didn't happen overnight. He's been fighting this for a long time." As he worked, a faint metallic glimmer appeared between the swollen tissues. Collins leaned closer. "There," he whispered. "We're getting close." Jake pressed a hand to the glass, breath fogging the window. Outside, the summer sun blasted the parking lot, but inside the room, the air felt icy with dread. Collins reached in with delicate forceps. The heart monitor shrieked, beep, 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 dip, dip. Alana sucked in a sharp breath. "Heart rate dropping fast," Brandon steadied his voice. "BP collapsing. We're losing him." But Collins didn't stop. "It's lodged deeper than I thought," he said, voice taut. "If I leave it, he dies. If I pull it too fast, he still dies." He maneuvered carefully, tension visible in every muscle of his forearms. Jake watched, helpless, feeling each second carve itself into his spine. Captain Harris muttered under his breath, "Stay with us, Max. Come on, boy." Then, finally, "I've got it," Collins said. He lifted the object slowly into the light. A small, jagged metal shard, no bigger than a bottle cap, darkened with time and oxidized edges. It looked sinister, as if it had spent months carving pain into Max's body with every breath, every jump, every mission. But the moment it left his chest cavity, the monitor let out a piercing sound. A single, long, unbroken beep filled the room. "Flatlining!" Alana cried. "Cardiac arrest," Brandon said, already moving. The surgical lights glared brighter, reflecting off the bloody metal fragment still clasped in Collins's trembling fingers. Outside, Jake slammed his palm against the glass. "No, no, no, Max!" The afternoon sun over Phoenix bled through the tall hospital windows, turning the hallway into a corridor of molten gold. Dust motes drifted lazily in the light, as if unaware of the storm raging just behind the glass divider of Operating Room 3. Outside, the summer heat pressed on the city like a heavy hand, but inside the sterile walls, the atmosphere was so tense it felt sharp enough to cut. Every officer in the corridor watched the flickering green line on the heart monitor through the viewing window. It didn't matter how bright the sunlight was. They saw only that fragile pulse dancing between hope and collapse. Max lay motionless within the halo of surgical lights, his sable coat dulled by antiseptic and exhaustion. The long incision across his chest was held open by retractors, revealing the internal battlefield where he and death were wrestling for dominance. His powerful muscles, once symbols of strength and loyalty, now shivered under thermal blankets as his body struggled to restart its failing systems. Dr. Samuel Collins stood at the center of the storm. His usually calm silver eyes now flickered with intensity, his brows knitted deep in concentration. Sweat collected at his temples despite the chilled air, and the lines etched into his face appeared deeper, as if the years of his profession were settling onto him all at once. His voice, normally steady, carried an edge born from the knowledge that even one misstep could end everything. Beside him, Nurse Alana Reyes worked swiftly, her petite frame moving with surprising strength. Her hazel eyes were laser-focused as she adjusted warming pads, drew up stabilizing medication, and monitored pressure levels. Though her hands executed every task with precision, her jaw remained tense. An echo of the wildfire loss she had endured long ago when she vowed never again to stand helplessly while a life slipped away. Brandon Keller, the tall, broad-shouldered nurse with the military past, joined them with practiced calm. His sandy blonde beard framed a face that looked carved from stone under stress, but his blue eyes held the soft steadiness of someone who had guided too many wounded souls through the edges of death. His combat medic instincts kicked in as he connected saline lines, adjusted transfusion pumps, and prepared emergency syringes with controlled urgency. But none of them moved with more heartbreak than Officer Jake Miller, who stood just outside, forehead pressed to the cool glass. His rugged features, square jaw, worn edges, faint stubble, now twisted in an agony he tried to hide behind a crooked half-smile. "Hang in there, buddy," he whispered, voice trembling. "Don't you dare make me drink alone at O'Malley's again." Behind him, the officers, Harris, Ryan, Emily, forced weak chuckles through tight throats. The attempt at humor collapsed quickly into silence. Then the door of the operating wing swung open, and in bounded a new figure, K9 Rocky, no, Ussa, strong, broad-chested German shepherd, with a thick black and tan coat, bright amber eyes, and a perpetually wagging tail. Rocky was younger than Max, about 4 years old, with a leaner build and a more playful energy, a stark contrast to Max's stoic demeanor. He was known across the precinct for his affectionate nature, the kind who greeted everyone with a nudge of his nose and an optimistic bark. Rocky whined as he caught Max's scent from the doorway, head tilting, ears perked in confusion. Officer Ryan crouched to soothe him, rubbing his neck. "Easy, boy. You're here to help." Rocky didn't understand the severity, but he sensed the grief in the air. His tail slowed, his ears flattened. Then Jake knelt beside him, resting a trembling hand on Rocky's cheek. "You saved him once during that warehouse collapse, remember?" Jake whispered with a cracked grin. "Looks like he needs you again, partner." Inside the OR, the surgical team prepared the donor setup. 2 operating tables were positioned parallel, a long red tube coiled between them like a lifeline, connecting Rocky's strong, beating heart to Max's faltering one. Brandon guided Rocky gently onto the second table, securing him and inserting the donation catheter with practiced care. Rocky didn't struggle. He simply looked toward Max, tail tap-tapping the blanket, as if offering comfort even in sedation. The transfusion began. Max's vitals wavered, dipped, surged, dipped again. Alana murmured, "His heart is too weak. We may be too late." But Brandon shook his head firmly. "Not while he's still fighting." Dr. Collins adjusted the warming blankets, applied gentle internal massage to encourage circulation, and changed medications with swift, decisive movements. Every few seconds he glanced up at the monitor, at that fragile green line that refused to choose life or death. Jake watched through the window, exhaling sharp breaths, his fists clenched so tightly his knuckles whitened. Emily placed a steadying hand on his shoulder, her auburn hair catching the sunlight as she whispered, "He's strong, stronger than half the men in this building." Inside, the green line spiked, then plummeted, then flickered erratically like a candle fighting the wind. "Stabilize," Collins barked. "Increase flow, more heat, prepare epinephrine." Brandon moved instantly. Alana steadied the tubes. The monitors shrieked protests. Rocky's steady blood supply pulsed through the tube, bringing color back into Max's gums. Yet his heartbeat still trembled on the edge of failure. Then Collins stepped back, his gaze fixed on the screen with a mixture of defiance and fear. "The next 10 minutes will decide everything," he said, voice low but heavy enough to silence the room. Either Max finds his way back to us, he paused, eyes locking onto the flickering line, or this is where we lose him forever. The morning sun rose gently over Phoenix, casting a warm, honey-gold glow across the skyline. Unlike the harsh, blistering heat of midday, sunrise carried a softness that felt almost forgiving, as if the desert city itself exhaled in relief after a long night. Through the wide windows of Brightview Animal Hospital's recovery wing, rays of sunlight spilled across the polished floors and climbed the pale walls until they reached the quiet room where Max slept. For the first time in days, the light felt hopeful. Max lay curled on a cushioned recovery bed, his thick sable and tan coat brushed and cleaned, a soft blanket tucked over his torso. The bandage at his side had been changed at dawn, wrapped neatly by the gentle hands of Nurse Alana Reyes, who now peeked through the doorway with her usual soft smile. She had not forgotten the wildfire that once took her old clinic, nor the animals she lost, but this victory, this fragile heartbeat she'd helped preserve, eased a corner of that grief. The heart monitor beside Max gave a steady rhythm, slow, strong, almost stubborn. Each time a familiar footstep sounded in the hallway outside, Max's tail gave a faint thump against the cushion, as if his body recognized the love surrounding him even before his mind fully woke. The door creaked open. Officer Jake Miller stepped in, wearing a crisp patrol uniform that contrasted sharply with the exhaustion etched into his rugged features. His usually confident stride carried a softness today, a reverence, as if approaching sacred ground. His dark eyes, still rimmed red from nights of fear and little sleep, brightened at the sight of the dog who had saved his life more than once. "Morning, partner," Jake murmured, lowering himself to one knee beside the bed. He rested a warm hand against Max's paw. "Shift starts in 10 minutes. Without you, I'm just a handsome guy with no backup." Max blinked awake. His brown eyes, though heavy with fatigue, warmed the room like sunlight. With effort, he lifted his paw, slowly, shakily, and placed it into Jake's waiting hand. It wasn't the desperate, trembling cling of a dying dog like the day before. It was the gesture of a fighter who had clawed his way back from the edge. Jake bowed his head, letting out a shaky laugh. "There he is, still bossing me around." A quiet knock sounded at the open door. Dr. Samuel Collins entered, tall and composed as always, though his silver hair appeared even more unruly after the sleepless nights spent monitoring Max. His weathered face softened at the sight of the two partners reunited. "He's stronger today," Collins said, tapping lightly at the chart on his tablet. "Heart rate stable, temperature climbing back toward normal. I'd say he's earned his breakfast." Behind him stood Nurse Brandon Keller, the broad-shouldered former combat medic. His sandy beard was trimmed neatly now, his blue eyes carrying the satisfied calm of a man who had seen too much loss and was grateful for a rare victory. He nodded respectfully toward Jake. "You brought us one hell of a soldier," Brandon said, "and he fought just as hard as any man I treated overseas." Jake squeezed Max's paw gently. "He's tougher than all of us." 3 days passed, each brighter than the last. Max regained strength slowly, first lifting his head, then standing with support, and eventually taking short, careful steps around the recovery room. The officers came in shifts, bringing toys, treats, posters drawn by school children, and even a handmade blanket sent by an elderly widow who watched the precinct's K9 updates online. Then came the day Phoenix had been waiting for. The precinct courtyard, surrounded by tall palms and waving flags, was drenched in pure golden summer sunlight. Blue uniforms filled the space, mingling with families, children, and local residents. At the center of the courtyard hung a large banner painted with careful strokes, honoring K9 Max, our hero. Captain Robert Harris, tall and broad with steel-gray hair and deep-set eyes hardened by 30 years of service, stepped proudly onto the small podium. A man known for discipline rather than sentiment, Harris had always stood like an immovable wall in the precinct, stern, steady, commanding. Yet today, his voice softened as he addressed the crowd. "Max has served this city with courage few humans could ever match," Harris said, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "He has saved officers, rescued civilians, and reminded us every day of the loyalty we swear to protect. He nearly gave his life for us, more than once, and he never stopped fighting." Jake guided Max, now walking slowly but confidently, toward the podium. Max's coat glistened under the sun, his ears perked, his expression calm and proud. Rocky trotted beside him with a goofy grin, as if unaware of his own heroism. Children cheered, officers saluted, mothers wiped tears. Captain Harris held up a small velvet box and opened it to reveal a shining medal shaped like a shield, engraved with a single word: bravery. "For his courage, devotion, and unbreakable spirit," Harris declared, "we award K9 Max the Honorary Medal of Valor." Jake knelt to fasten the medal around Max's neck. As he did, the dog lifted his head, and sunlight caught his eyes, two bright sparks of life reclaimed from the brink of death. The courtyard erupted in applause. Rocky yawned and flopped onto his side, tail thumping lazily, completely unconcerned with the fuss around him. Max lay at Jake's feet, breathing steady, tail flicking gently against the warm concrete. Under the blazing summer sky of Phoenix, the story of Max, the police dog who fought through pain, survived the impossible, and returned to stand by his partner, became a legend whispered with pride. A reminder etched into the hearts of everyone present: to love fiercely, to protect bravely, and to keep fighting, as long as even a single heartbeat remains. In the end, Max's story was more than the survival of a brave police dog. It was a quiet reminder that miracles still exist, sometimes carried on paws instead of wings. When his heartbeat faded, when human knowledge reached its limit, something unexplainable happened. A strength returned. A life rose again. A hope that no one dared to expect was suddenly there, soft, steady, undeniable. Some call it luck, some call it fate. But many of us know moments like these by another name: God's gentle hand, reaching into the darkest hour, reminding us that His light never leaves those who love, protect, and sacrifice. And in our everyday lives, during sickness, loneliness, fear, or the nights when our strength feels too small, may Max's story remind you that God's grace can appear quietly, through a loyal friend, a second chance, a door you didn't expect to open, or a miracle you never thought could be yours. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs hope today. Write a comment about where you're watching from and how God has blessed your life. And don't forget to subscribe, so you'll never miss another story of courage, love, and the miracles that still walk this earth. May God bless you, protect your family, bring peace to your home, and strengthen your spirit every single day. And may He continue to watch over heroes like Max and heroes like you.